Okay, good evening. Welcome to East Cliff and Springbourne Residents Group Bournemouth East 2024 General Election Hustings. Before we start, I'll give a good thanks to Linda and Howard Penn for hosting this event at the East Cliff United Reformed Church. Let's respect each other at this meeting anyway. Also, thanks to Damien Stone, who's filming the event up there, and also to Councillor Zara Armstrong for help she's put into the event. We also have BBC Radio 4 recording this event. With the questions, the rules are for the panel, 2 minutes each question. For the audience, no multiple, duplicate, or questions aimed at any one particular person. They must be relevant and they must be brief. The first question will be about East Cliff and Springbourne Ward. I'll just explain as well how the question is going to be chosen. So basically, I should be choosing at random who's going to ask a question. So I've got a way of trying to balance that across the church. But first of all, we have each candidate has 3 minutes to give an introductory speech. So as Kieron is near me, we'll go that way around.
Cheers, thanks, Sam. It's been time here. So unfortunately, he's probably come to the least prepared candidate because I've been out every day since the election started, walking about 15 miles a day to try and get to everybody's house, to try and make people aware that I'm standing. You know, as an independent, self-funded, it's really, really difficult to get your message and your point across as to why you want to stand and why people should, you know, use their vote to vote for you. And the reason I believe you should use your vote to vote for me is because I am unbeholden to any national party. I only want to work for you. This week, a lot of the national parties are releasing their manifestos. I don't have one. I have values such as being accountable, being contactable, and trying my best to serve you. I don't see it as a one-way conversation like the national parties do. I believe that there's a dialogue to be had with me and the community. So I only aim to serve you guys. There are some things that I have really strong ideas on, such as housing. I believe that we're in a housing crisis. There are unaffordable rents across the town. There's the condition of housing, and there's the availability of housing, much of which there isn't, unfortunately. I think that pretty much over the last 15 years, every public service that you can think of has been run down to the ground. We're paying more taxes than ever before and getting much less back for them. So I believe that I want to make a change, and I want to see the two parties that haven't worked for us over a number of years held to account for that. So that's why I believe we need a strong, independent voice in Parliament to do that. And that's what I'm running. So sorry for winging that a little bit, but thank you for listening.
Hello. I'm Penn. I'm the SDP candidate. Many of you probably wondering who on earth the SDP are. What we are, we're a left-leaning, softly conservative party. What that means is we're going to ask the questions you actually want to ask. We're going to have the difficult conversations regarding immigration, sorry, I'm winging it as well, I do apologise. Regarding housing, regarding net zero, regarding the things that actually matter to us. But also at the same time, unlike some of my colleagues, we're not going to promise 1,000,001 tax cuts to sweeten the deal, only to then proceed to cut all the service we vitally need. I've lived here, I'm 29, I've lived here my entire life. I've watched growing up year on year of essentially state-mandated decline. I've watched our roads fall apart. I've watched myself being priced out of housing for various reasons, and I've watched the Tories and Labour witter on, bicker between themselves. Some of them did those too. Rarely. I've watched them sort of just witter on and not actually get to the bottom of it. You know, the parliamentary debate the other day, you watch Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak sort of just spend 2 hours trying to know each other, not being able to answer any questions. I believe that we need an alternative, and that alternative is the SVP. Now, we're the fastest growing party in the country, and frankly, we're what people want. You know, I appreciate maybe one that I'm doing a bit, but I'm running because we need an alternative. We need something that isn't the same old duopoly that have failed us. We need people who are from Bournemouth, grew up in Bournemouth, see Bournemouth as the only home they'll ever really see, because what a great place it is. And we need people like me. I'm 29, I'm young, I'm growing up, to be here for the long haul and not see it as some Westminster careerist opportunity. I look forward to answering your questions. Do apologise if I do come across nervous, because this is my first time doing this, so I hope you bear with me in that. But yeah, appreciate you all being here.
Well, good evening everyone, thank you all for coming along. My name is Martin Houlden. I'm a long-time resident of Bournemouth. I've lived here for decades now. I've worked here, raised kids here, sent them to the schools here. I like to remember how the town used to be, how it used to be a safe place to walk around. I'm standing for the Reform Party, and out of the 7 candidates here, I'm probably the only one who's scared to talk about immigration, to say that we need to get a grip on the ludicrous numbers of additional people coming into the country. 670,000 additional people last year. 745,000 the year before that. So, if you're wondering why public services are suffering, why housing or rents are so unaffordable, why everything is so congested, this is the reason. Now, no one argues that a sensible level of immigration is good for the country, but if unlimited immigration is such a benefit to the Treasury, how come our taxes are at the highest level they've been in over 70 years? And at Reform, we're the only party prepared to say what the others here won't. And that is quite simple. We want to freeze non-essential immigration. We're going to stop boats, small boats we picked up and take them back to France. We want to prioritise social housing for British people, because I'm sick of seeing our people having to sleep rough when people who are here illegally are given accommodation in luxury hotels. It's just not fair. It's not all about immigration. We want to actually grow the economy, grow away out of this mess. We want to boost wages by lifting the tax threshold from £12,500 a year to £20,000. Effectively, that puts about £1,500 a year back into your pocket, which is a huge sum of money, especially for those people on low incomes. We want to scrap VAT on fuel bills and lower energy duty to ease the cost of living. And we want to train our young people for careers, especially in the NHS, where our policy is that doctors and nurses who work in the NHS for 10 years will have their student loans written off. My feeling is that this country has been going along the same path, certainly as long as I recall it, at least the last 20 or 30 years, and swapping between blue and red parties every few years really hasn't made much of a difference. Reform is the only party out there offering to rip up the status quo and really get to grips with the big problems that both the Tories and Labour have heaped upon us over the last 25 years. So we'll all be talking about change tonight, I dare say. If you want real change, if you want reform, then you have to vote for it. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Joe. I'm Joe Salmon. I live here in Bournemouth with my wife and our 2 children. I'm a counsellor for the Moordown ward, as is my wife, and I've worked in the NHS for the last 8 years now. I was working for the South West Ambulance Service at the height of the pandemic as the hub manager at St Leonard's Hospital, and it was my experiences then that made me realise actually we really need people like me in politics. All that needed to happen during the pandemic was for our politicians to follow the clinical advice and keep their bloody hands out of the till, and they couldn't even manage out. Billions of pounds lost to COVID fraud. We had a situation where millions of pounds were spent on PPE that either didn't exist or didn't work, and the tender process seemed to be trying to bump into Matt Hancock down the pub when he's not trying to seduce his employees. It's disgusting, the state of politics in this country. We have been here before though. I remember in 1997 listening to all the Labour pledges, how Tony Blair would take marketisation out of our public services and sort them out, stop hitting doctor against doctor, nurse against nurse. And instead, when Labour came into power, we saw the solidification of that purchaser-provider split in the NHS with foundation trusts. We saw the same thing in education with academy schools. We saw things like PFI, which have hobbled our public services for generations. We cannot trust the promises from Labour and the Tories because they are beholden to the system of legalised corruption and bribery that exists in our country because of our laws around lobbying and political donations. Frank Hester does not give millions of pounds to the Conservative Party because he thinks Rishi Sunak is a snappy dresser. He makes those donations because he knows he will get a return on that investment tenfold in how his company can profit from the NHS. Similarly, Labour's incoming Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, he isn't being given tens of thousands of pounds, hundreds of thousands of pounds, I think, in fact, by people linked to private healthcare because they really like the cut of his jib. They are donating that money because they know that he will not take their noses out of the trough. And if anything, if you listen to the actual reforms he's intending for greater involvement of the private sector, he will be widening that trough. It is corruption. What's on the ballot this election is a really clear binary choice. It is between the traditional parties that are dominated by that literal, it happens in broad daylight, that legal corruption that happens with those massive donations, and then candidates like myself and the other independents who aren't funded like that. If you want to know what anybody on this stage will do, follow the money. All of those glossy promises and election leaflets and all of that only last until election day. Whoever pays the piper calls the tune. And that is how politics works in this country at the moment, and that is why our country is so broken. That is the fundamental problem we have to address. And that is why you will see again and again, when people like myself, people like the wonderful Green Council we've got in this ward, Sarah, stand for election, we get it, and we make a real difference. And I cannot wait to do that as Bournemouth East's next MP. Thank you for coming.
My name is Jon Nicholas, and I'm the Lib Dem candidate in this election. And full disclosure, I'm not the slightest bit scared of talking about immigration. And I've seen you, Martin, if you think they're luxury hotels, then you've been severely shortchanged on holiday. I'm very, very briefly, I first moved here in 1985, and I've sort of crossed this constituency and this ward multiple times. By bus, on foot, on cycle. I've worked at Sainsbury's in Boscombe. I used to flip burgers in the Hammy House in Boscombe. Anybody remember the Hammy House in Boscombe? Yeah, that's where I learned to flip burgers. Then I took a tip job in Tugton to sort of pay for some of my schooling. I also worked at the Hungry Hiker. So I've worked sort of in various cross-section places. Currently, I'm an associate practitioner with Vita Nova in Boscombe. And I get involved in this sort of interactive, creative work that works predominantly with people with mental health issues and challenges and people recovering from addiction, if you're in recovery. Coupled with that, I work all over the country doing conflict management work, interactive, dialogue-based activities that try and broker more useful relationships between groups that are in antagonistic conflict, either because of stories they've heard, different narratives that are being spread, or because of real sort of challenges that they're experiencing. It takes me all over. And the country is in a very sick condition, I'm very sad to say. There are, you can see the social fabric literally falling apart, sometimes in front of your eyes. I was at the Citizens Advice Bureau this morning, went to speak to the staff there, and I gave just a map basically of the issues and challenges. And what's happening now is a relatively new trend. People are presenting with one issue, but on further discovery there's many, many more. So there are people in multiple needs. There's housing crisis, there's cost of living, there are a whole range of challenges. And we are becoming increasingly polarised. I'm going next week to work in Houlden on a process that we've designed in order to sort of facilitate more useful conversations about the far right. And it's a dialogue orientation, trying to engage with people you vehemently disagree with to take the violence and pain and unpleasant rhetoric out of the situation. And I'm very hopeful that this election stays like that. I have all reason to believe that it can do. But I make that point because we are so stuck in positions, we've lost the art of dialogue and compromise. And with all due respect to Tobias, I think it's a decent person. I can't understand how anybody's been a member of that party for such a long time. It has crumbled. You can laugh, what I mean is I think he is, but I think his party has completely lost its way. It is feeding some of the things that I have to challenge in communities. 3 minutes.
Hello, I'm Tom Hayes and I'm going to be your Labour MP for Bournemouth East. And I want to start by thanking the Residents Association for putting on this event and all of you for coming along. I'm here today as your Labour candidate for MP, as someone who understands firsthand the challenges facing our community. Not merely because I live in East Clifton Springboard itself, but because my journey has been shaped by caring for disabled parents as a child, by toiling in low-income jobs as a teenager, learning and earning whatever I could in order to build a brighter future for myself, my loved ones, and my community. These experiences aren't distant memories for me. They're the driving force behind my present and my future, the bedrock upon which my commitment to public service stands. The memory of unanswered police calls, the bureaucratic maze of dysfunctional housing and council departments, that feeling of being adrift without the language or skills to navigate life's complexities. Those were the problems that I had growing up in the 1980s, but when I knock on the doors of Bournemouth East, those are the problems that are facing countless people. For nearly a decade I served as a councillor, tackling austerity, supporting communities through the pandemic. As deputy leader of a council, I've shouldered the responsibility of leadership and ensured that the council served every citizen with compassion and diligence. And today, as the chief executive of a charity, I provide vital services to those battling mental health, crises, homelessness, and domestic abuse. I'm in a hurry. We should be in a hurry. No one should feel abandoned and adrift. No one in our communities should endure a government as corrupt, as incompetent, and as willfully dangerous as the one we have right now. And we stand at a crossroads, battered by more than a decade and more of this government, the gaps in our society widening into chasms. You can feel it in our society, you can feel it in this room, that tension, that need for people to come together and heal as a society. What we have instead is a Tory government spread a culture of division and blame that's left millions behind. I'm here as your candidate for MP because I refuse to accept that this has to be our future. We can do better. Enough is enough. And I have a plan, a commitment to bridge those gaps, to restore hope to our communities, to bring unity to our society, and I'm going to make sure that you, the people of Bournemouth East, are not alone. Thank you.
My turn. Thank you, firstly, very much indeed for the opportunity to speak and say a few words this evening. Thank you for the welcoming committee outside as well. Thank you to the security that had to come here to, oh, they're going inside, that's great. I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to speak later. It says a little bit about our politics, the fact that we now require security for these events. I'm sure we're going to get onto policy in further detail, but I just want to perhaps begin because I think the reason, the value of these events is that you actually get to see the personality, the person, the individual that is seeking to represent you as your parliamentarian. Now, we just marked the 80th anniversary of the D-Day landings. My grandfather was a parachutist. He landed in Normandy. I remember with him when I was a little child, a very tiny little child, and he showed me the medals that he'd won. We didn't really want to talk about it too much. He showed me his burial. And I'm sure that inspired me to consider perhaps looking into the armed forces, a sense of duty as to what I should do with my life. It helped shape my life, along with my mother as a teacher and my father, a civil servant working for the United Nations. That's actually been the driving force in what's guided me throughout my life. To actually be able to stand up, have the courage to speak out, even if it actually gets me into trouble. I'm an interventionist by heart. I will cross the road if I see something wrong. And yes, there is things wrong with the Conservative Party. There has been for the last few years. There's no doubt about it. I've had the privilege of being the parliamentarian here for the last couple of decades. And I share with you, and I'm very, very honest to say, that the last few years have been the most testing. The most testing not just from an international perspective because of the global headwinds that we've had to face. Half of our GDP is affected by what goes on abroad. That's had a knock-on impact of the cost of living crisis, which I'm sure we're going to explore later. But it's also had a profound impact on what's going on in the UK and indeed in my party. Where should my party actually go? And the reason why I'm on the backbenches, or we're on the backbenches, no longer an MP, because I dare to stand up to my own party. And that is, I think, an indication perhaps of the type of parliamentarian that I would like to see. I was actually born in the United States, and there, if you want to be a senator, you have to be over 35 before you can even stand. Why? It's because you're obliged to go and get some life experience. So when you end up in the Senate, you end up doing public service, you can speak with some authority. Now, whether you're a councillor, as I've been, or indeed a member of Parliament, I like to look at everybody in the eye and say, what do you stand for? I want to see the energy, the determination, the grit, the tenacity to say, yes, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to change. It might be small or it might be large. That's what I want to see. And I don't mind whatever party, whatever hue you might be. That's the passion that I want to see in politics. And I'll share with you that things have changed. It's become very populist, it's become very, very angry. And we saw it to some degree today. We certainly saw it outside of my house as well, where the messaging that you get is designed to disrupt, to sow discord, to actually engender a little bit of hate as well, to actually upset. That's not what I want to be. You will not hear, I'm already being heckled by it, but please, you may not like what I have to say. Please respect my right to say it. And I'll make that really, really clear. But I don't go personally. I will not go personally. I will not criticise any individuals. I will criticise policy, absolutely right. And I put my hand up to say it has been difficult, but I can look in the mirror and I can look at you and I can actually tell you exactly what I stand for and be proud of it. Thank you very much indeed.
Okay, we come to the question time. As the event's being filmed and audio recorded, if you don't want to be filmed, or you don't want to put your name forward, that's fine. But when you ask a question, say I don't want to be filmed. Basically, it's coming along those lines. So the very first question will be about East Cliff and Springbourne Ward. So who wants to ask that question? Well, okay. You have your hand up, so yeah. Come up here and ask the question.
Thank you very much, Mark. You must know me by now that any opportunity that I have to speak about East Cliff and Springbourne, I'm going to take it. So thank you for letting me take the floor first. I want to thank you all for coming, and I particularly want to thank Linda and the church for providing such a safe and open space for us to have dialogue. And I hope each and every one of you will feel welcomed into our ward. What I want to come on to is I want to talk about the inequality crisis that I see in our ward, and I see it every day. I see it from the graffiti that the council can't afford to clear off the walls. I see it at the fly tipping. I see it to the lack of police resources to deal with the increasing antisocial behaviour and crime that we see in the ward. Where we're located here is right in the heart, almost, of the red light area. So we have families who are taking their children to school, who are dealing with the night before, or even on the Sunday afternoon. I had a resident that I met with recently who told me that her children can't play in the front garden on a Sunday afternoon because there are women and punters out in the streets. So we are working very hard as a local community to tackle a lot of issues. And I really feel, Tobias, that your partnership has been absent. I have to say that. I'm going to ask my question now. Thank you, Mark. Because we have worked so hard locally to try and tackle a lot of these issues, but we need partnership from our representative. We need our MP on board, and we need to be working a lot closer with the national governments and other networks. So I would like to know from each and every one of you what you will bring to partnership, not only for Bournemouth East, but for East Cliff and Springbourne, and for Tobias, a slightly different angle. What will you bring that's different to what we've already had?
No question answered.
It's okay, I'm complete. Thanks a lot.
Okay. So, basically, we're going to have one question on it. So basically, what will you bring to East Cliff and Springbourne Ward? I think that's the question.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, I'll pass it for Tobias to answer that one first.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed. I'm invited to sit on the Town's End Fund, the Town's Fund for Boscombe, and I attend those meetings because I'm invited to do so. I've not been invited directly to sit on anything here. If I were, then I'd certainly be there. But I can tell you that we communicate, and I communicate with the council probably about 100 or 200 times a week, dealing with issues and matters as well. I speak to the Chief Executive Officer on the phone almost every single week, dealing with matters, chasing things up. So I'm sorry you feel the need to make that comment as well without first checking as to where things are. The reason why some of the comments that have come from the councillors have been very politically charged. I'm not, as I say, I'm not going to go down there, but the letters that we received have been most really provocative that I've ever found, to the point where there's no point in trying to engage with those who work with the actual directors themselves. Let's just step back from this. We're coming out of a very difficult time in our economy. But as we see, growth is now improving, we're seeing business confidence return, inflation is down. This is an opportunity to craft a better vision for Bournemouth. And there is not the sense of bold vision that we're seeing there. When I first arrived in Bournemouth, I wanted to actually get a light railway going from the airport down through to the station here and then onto the seafront. I even spoke to Manchester Airports Group. They said, fine, we'll create a terminus for it. It was never put in the local plan, so that money came from London to make that happen. In that same period, Coventry, Newcastle, places like Nottingham and so forth, Sheffield, have all created light railway systems for their town as well. We do need a vision. Our three strengths in this town are financial services, thanks to somebody inviting JP Morgan down here. We're leveraging that with Eagle Star, Barclays, Liverpool, Victoria. Let's leverage that even further. Second is tourism. There isn't even a tourism department or a cabinet member for tourism for Bournemouth. This is a seaside town. That's our second strength. And the final strength is our universities and creative industries. That's where Britain is going. That's our strength. We are the third largest high-tech superpower in the world. And Bournemouth should be leveraging that. These are all the things that here in Springbourne and Eastern we can actually make happen. The railway station. I remember walking through Victoria Station. One second.
No.
Victoria Station, and it was a mess. Why did we create Bournemouth railway station? Turn that around. We can easily do so. The railway companies want to do it. No council vision.
Just remind the panel that it's meant to be 2 minutes of question, otherwise we're not going to get through many questions. Okay.
Right, so you had 14 years to sort stuff out.
Hey everyone. So I want to start by thanking Sarah for that question. And I also want to start by noticing that this panel is all male. And that here in East Cliff and Springbourne we have 3 fantastic women councillors representing 3 different parties. And I'm saying that because clearly in East Cliff and Springbourne there's a diversity of view. And as councillors you are representing that diversity of view. If you're getting in touch with your MP and they're finding that difficult, that doesn't mean they should stop speaking with you. It means they should find a language and a way of working with you. So when you ask about what would the partnership approach look like, it would be about believing in true partnership. It's treating others with respect, with dignity. The idea that everybody has something to give, everybody has a talent and something important to contribute. And my job as MP is to try and find a way to work with others so that everyone in our community can contribute something. I've got experience of partnership working by chairing an anti-slavery network to support exploited and vulnerable people, by chairing a mental health partnership of third sector agencies and an NHS trust, or chairing a zero carbon partnership of major employers and emitters. And the reason I chaired those partnerships or set them up is because I realised I alone do not have all the answers. I alone do not have all the solutions. But together, all of us will. And I want to be a Labour MP that brings attention and investment to Bournemouth from a Labour government. We've been taken for granted by the Conservatives. It's time for change. Let's try something new. Let's try a new, more inclusive, open approach. Let's try a Labour MP for the first time ever. And let's try one who can work with the Labour government to truly fix our local problems.
Let's try a Lib Democrat MP for the first time ever. I think lots has been said. That's actually, I say that in a glib way. There's not a great deal that I disagree with in terms of what Tom says. But I think, also I'm a member of the Lib Democrats, but I'm genuinely dialogue and consensus orientated. And walking through Springbourne, as I do regularly on the way to various places, I have to say, sadly, there seems to be a dilapidation. And it's something I'm seeing across the country. And it's fine for Tobias to say, bring in JP Morgan here, but the money's not here. The money's not in Boston. There's clearly palpable need. Now, there are 2 reasons why we should address that. Firstly, an ethical reason, a human reason, and secondly, for an economic one. Because when you walk around places, you just see helplessness, learned helplessness and desperation. And in those sorts of situations, people aren't really in a position to begin to think about their future or build their managing on a day-to-day basis. It's obscene. Now, the Lib Democrat, I'm going to quote chapter and verse of the Lib Democrat manifesto, but they want to obviously find money to spend on things where it needs to be put. And my view is that it needs to be put in order to inspire and create aspiration. And that can be done in multiple ways. I think Tom's quite right. By getting people to talk together and work together. And this may seem trivial, but Boscombe has had a very bad reputation, a stigmatisation, if you like, something that's very similar here. Festivals such as the Increase the Peace Festival. Did anybody go there? Yeah, what a brilliant thing that was. That reframed people's experiences of that location. And it brought together a range of artists and creative people and all other sorts who just want to experience that. So we need to create more things like that. We need to have a rising inflection. I partially work in the arts world as well, so I'm aware of that. I'm aware of this lost creativity that we have and we can capture. Quick fixed answers, there are none, but we do need to reconsider the redistribution of wealth because there are time bombs, not just in Springbourne, in many communities across the country, and they need to be addressed.
So, in terms of getting anything sorted out for East Cliff and Springbourne, that takes investment. We need to invest in the area. That will only happen if we close tax loopholes, and we should recognise that those loopholes, they're not bugs, they're features, they are their intention. A wealth tax is absolutely key. This is something that is not being offered by Labour and the Tories. I think it's also worth noticing, though, that in terms of partnership working with the council, I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but my understanding is you've not met with the leader of the council since June last year. That is not partnership working.
I met her in Parliament. I met her in Parliament only 3 weeks ago, and she ran away. It was Graham Farron that then stayed with me. She refused to engage. That, I'm afraid, is where the relationship ended up. She did not want to speak because it became so competitive.
Right. So, one of the big issues we've got here is knife crime. This is something I'm really passionate about. It's something me and Sarah have got emotions to. It's also one of the worst bits of casework I've had to deal with recently. Me and my wife, we were contacted by the parents of Tory, who was murdered in the town in 2022. We were contacted because his parents are absolutely at the end of their tether with the progress of the public inquest into his death and the lack of a public inquiry, and that their letters to Tobias have gone ignored. Apparently you've lost the letters in your office. It wouldn't, I'm going to be honest, if one of my constituents' families experienced a tragedy like that, I would not wait for them to contact me. We have to face facts. Much as Martin thinks we're uncomfortable talking about immigration, it's a conversation I'm happy to have. At the moment, our immigration system is absolutely broken. We have a system that allowed a young man to come into this country illegally at 18 years of age, lie about his age, attend a school in the area, posing as a child, and then carry out a horrific murder. This system is utterly broken. Our public services have been intentionally run down, and they are crying out for investment. They are crying out for cross.
Okay.
I'm going to have a couple more seconds, just because I was interrupted. That investment is absolutely essential, and we will not get that while the parties in charge are bankrolled by the very rich who do not want to see their taxes go up. They are happy for that burden to fall on us, and we cannot give any more. We cannot afford to pay the tax that will get us the investment we need. We absolutely must have a wealth tax. Thank you.
I just want to raise a point here, where one of the other candidates clearly makes a point, a controversial point in a particular case about one of the other candidates, then I do feel that the other candidate does have a right of reply, so just sort of make that point.
I think we just remind ourselves the question that the lady was asking is of what your MP can do for you in this area. I think one of the most important things is for us to say, proudly say, that we're happy to work with everyone in the area, whoever needs you, irrespective of whether they supported you in the election, whether they voted for you, whether they're rich, whether they're poor. You are here to support and represent everyone. Now, most of you don't know me, but before we lived in Bournemouth for a few years, my wife and I lived in Wiltshire, and I was an elected councillor at a town in Wiltshire. That involved working with all types of people in the town on a day-to-day basis. A few of the things I did, one of the things was to get a system of 10 defibrillators installed within the town, which required a lot of negotiation with the town councillors, the buildings that were going to have the defibrillators signed upon, and negotiating, dealing with the press as well. At that same time, I was also involved with my local hospital charity. I was actually on the board of the local hospital charity, and we would help everyone who came into the hospital if they needed it, including raising money and putting on events for them. And I'm very happy to say that I obviously worked with all those people, irrespective of their socio-economic status. Now, we've just talked a little bit about tax and wealth, and obviously people who don't quite understand economics always think the way to solve everything is to tax people more. This is always said by people who have never heard of something called the Laffer curve. I don't know if anyone's here is familiar with it, but it basically is, all graphs are made up. It basically shows that the more tax, the higher tax burden you place on people, the lower the taxes get. There's a perfect bell curve between the amount of tax coming in and the amount of people paying it. And if you pitch it in the middle, you get the highest tax into the treasury. And that's what we need, to get more money in, but we need to give people the freedom to work, the freedom to think, actually, it's worth getting out of bed in the morning, it's worth going to work and paying those taxes. That's how we raise more money.
the other key things. You know, I think we have a situation where poverty is rising all over the country. We're a situation where some parties want to increase that by, you know, making energy prices more expensive, or decreasing our wages, or cutting all the taxes to give you a nice sweetener, and then getting rid of all the services so NHS doesn't work. What I want to do is give people what they want. I want to see a situation where people don't have to, people's children can stay in the front gardens whenever they want, weather permitting, of course. I want to be in a situation where, you know, we can walk down the streets. You know, my brother's 19. I walk 19. He's time flies, he's 22. I want to be in a situation where I don't worry he's going to get stabbed on a night out when he's out with his mates enjoying himself, like I used to 2 years ago. I want to know that everything, the Bournemouth that I know, the Bournemouth that you all know, can exist again. I'll be here for you. You know, I work at LD, I have a job, an everyday job where I deal with people constantly. I'm not going to overdo my time. I'm an everyday person and I understand everyday problems. And I want to fix them for you. It's the only way we're going to sort the country out. And I don't believe anyone else on this panel has the ability to do so. I don't truthfully believe a lot of them have Bournemouth's best interests at heart. Thank you.
Okay, what would I bring to Eastcliff, Springboard and Bournemouth in general? Well, firstly, as an independent, I don't have any of that party package, so I don't hate Labour or Conservatives or Green or anybody. I'm willing to work with everyone to do what's best for Bournemouth. But secondly, as a person, I think I would probably bring compassion. I think that people in politics forget that they have 2 ears and 1 mouth. And I think it's really, really important to actually listen to the community and to listen to what they need and then to reflect that in what you do. I just noticed coming in Angela, who set up a few years ago the Poverty Commission, which got a number of different organisations together to try and tackle the inequalities within our community. And I was privileged enough to be part of that. And a big part of that was not actually necessarily finding the solutions, because the solutions are beyond a small community group in many ways, but it's about going through the process of trying to find those solutions and hearing other people's real life experiences. We had business and civic commissioners, so people from the council, people from different housing charities, people from DWP, all over the place, and then we had people with real lived experience. And we spent a long time, a year together, each month for 2 hours, talking to each other, actually learning and building deep relationships with people, and understanding the different stories and struggles that they had been through. And it was a really, really worthwhile process. So I try and apply that kind of methodology to being your representative. I try and listen very deeply and try and understand what walking in your shoes is like. Thank you.
Okay, we come to the floor to general questions. Okay, the gentleman over there.
First of all, the only hatred expressed outside was the hatred of genocide and the slaughter of children. British companies are supplying weapons to the Israeli armed forces to commit genocide.
Question. I've made the rules clear, and the first speaker did breach the rules. So So basically, I want a simple question. That's what I want.
British companies like BAE Systems are supplying weapons. I was told by one of the other candidates that if we stop supplying weapons, we do British influence. British influence is a disaster in Palestine. So my question is, will the candidates withdraw all arms licenses for British companies selling to Israel? And by the way, I'm not interested in what the racist here has to say.
I didn't quite catch your name, but thank you for the question. I want to start by saying that I recognise that the sale of arms causes damage and destruction. I used to work at Oxfam GB as their head of UK campaigns, and one of the campaigns that I ran was to stop the sale of British bombs to Saudi Arabia for the dropping on Yemeni civilians. So that campaigning is ingrained in some of my back history. What Labour has said around the sale of arms to Israel is that a new government would not be selling arms to Israel, that we would be supporting the International Criminal Court in taking forward the proposal for arrest warrants for certain Israeli government officials, that we respect the independence of the ICC, and we've repeatedly called on the Netanyahu government to stop its offences and to call for an immediate ceasefire. So that's the position of the Labour Party. I realise you asked a very specific question around arms sales, but I want to give you a direct answer as well as some additional context there.
Yeah, hello. Continually selling arms to a situation like that does feel like pouring petrol on fire. And I think we run the risk and the danger of becoming immune to the absolute pain and horror. So I'd be in favour of an embargo of some sorts. Because it's simply unacceptable. But I think we also have to acknowledge and be very, very careful. It's very attractive and easy to take sides. I take a very simple and clear side, no violence, and a side in favour of dialogue. And I'm not talking about what happened here, which is clearly shared with passion. I'm talking about some ways across the globe, at a safe distance, sides are taken, and that actually has an inflammatory consequence. I think from the very moment of beginning, we need to speak to all sides in terms of how, and I'm not talking about governments, I'm talking about sending messages to populations of all sides. I have run a number of projects in Palestine and Israel, and mixed identity groups in this country. And I was very moved the other day, a message from an former Israeli participant. And we were reflecting on the time where he gave the Shabbat ritual to a mixed group of Palestinians and Israelis. And he said, that seems like 1,000 years ago now. How can we get this back? So anything we do, we can have angry protest and passionate protest. And I understand where that comes from. We have to find ways of speaking to those that we wish to engage with. As Nelson Mandela said, we do not make peace by speaking to our friends. And I am concerned that the inflammatory rhetoric shores up sides. There's a clear, palpable inequality in terms of arms and their usage and the consequences. The deaths on one side of this horror clearly outweigh another. And we need to take that into considerable check using international organisations and whatever power that we have. But we also need to be considered and measured and understand the historic and passed on trauma that many people from the Israeli communities experience. That's it, I'm afraid. Simple, short.
Thank you for your question, Pete. It did take 37,000 Palestinian deaths for me to realise that a ceasefire was the right thing. The inaction on this from Labour and the Tories is utterly unforgivable. The Green Party position is really straightforward. We believe that there should be a durable political solution that ensures security and equal rights for Israelis and Palestinians. That means an end to the system of apartheid that is currently in place. We need an urgent international effort to end the illegal occupation of Palestinian land. We need an investigation and persecution of those who carried out war need to be said, but I absolutely believe in an end to all arms exports and military aid cooperation through Gaza. I'm proud that one of the first things myself and the rest of the Green Group did was bring a motion calling for a ceasefire. And I think it is shameful that there are many members of the traditional parties who could not support us in that call for peace. I'm going to repeat myself with any of you who have heard me talk before on this, but I just cannot imagine what it must be like as a clinician in Gaza. I've had some horrific moments working for the ambulance service where you look at what the demand is and what you've got and you are terrified that you cannot help everybody. And I just think if I was in one of the remaining hospitals that hasn't been bombed, how I would feel if I could shut out all the rest of the horror looking through the number of, it's acronym that I've only just learned, WCNSF, Wounded Child, No Surviving Family. What is happening in Gaza is a stain on our conscience, and it cannot continue.
Well, as much as it pains me to agree with the Lib Dem, because it doesn't happen very often, I have to say I do totally agree with what Jon said. I can't really add much more to it. The question was about whether we would approve arms sales, British arms sales, and I would have to also agree with that. I think an embargo is the only sensible way forward. So, seeing as the gentleman over there doesn't want to hear from me anyhow, I'll pass the microphone on.
Just to, I'd just like to admonish the Christian maker. I think for civil discourse, I think calling him a racist was a bit uncalled for and unnecessary in this situation, regardless of your views on him. Anyways, regardless, I actually prepared a statement on a child subject, which is as follows. Unlike some political parties, the SDP is not obsessed about conflict in the Middle East. We are more concerned about solving our own problems, which are frankly, as British citizens, more important. Nevertheless, the SDP will support action to bring its future a swift and peaceful conclusion, thus minimising the loss of life on both sides. We support the idea of two states living peacefully as neighbours, and will play our part in international efforts to achieve this. But this will only succeed by building confidence in peaceful solutions.
You'll never get into power.
Just to keep this quite brief, yes, I would be against selling arms to Israel. And also I think we need to be selling arms to we have a very strange relationship with some states in this area, and I think we should be looking into that because it runs deeper as well as selling off national assets to them. And that's a huge worry. I'm not talking about Israel necessarily, Saudi Arabia, other countries with difficult human rights records. So, but yeah, I would be against selling arms.
Thank you for the question. This is a very, very difficult subject indeed. It's taxed Parliament daily over the number of months that this has been going on. I was the first parliamentarian after the 7th of October attacks, but before Prime Minister Netanyahu rolled the tanks in to say, don't do it. Don't send in your military, your huge military might, unless you have some form of plan, a strategy as to where this goes. It's absolutely right that Israel has a right to defend itself. I'm going to finish my sentence because you cut me off halfway. And I stand here today saying you can support the state and the people of Israel and criticise their utility of military force, which has been wrong without a plan, and equally stand here and criticise Hamas for what they did, but be supportive of the Palestinian people. And that's a far more nuanced position than I'm afraid it's become very, very binary. It's either right or wrong. It's not as clear cut as that. No, let me get to that point. I'm talking about the bigger picture here. Okay, so now you're just shouting at me. happens in Ukraine affects Britain. It affects the international community of which we are part of and we are a leader of as well. We have a permanent seat on the United Nations Security Council. It's thanks to our work with our colleagues that's got a ceasefire as a UN resolution. That's very, very important indeed. I'll be clear. If it can give leverage for a wider strategic direction, then yes, it makes sense to hold back arms sales. But if you're simply doing it to make yourself feel better here in the UK, like the call for a ceasefire on the second day of this, it doesn't wash, it doesn't lead to it. You speak to Hussein Zumlot, who's the Palestinian ambassador. I met him last Thursday, and he makes it very, very clear that he wants to see a ceasefire pushed in straight away. The only way that you're going to get that is firstly by Hamas stopping sending their bombs, and by Israel from sending their bombs as well. This is the bigger picture that we need to focus on. And until we get to that bigger picture, then I'm afraid that the crisis will actually continue. No stakeholders in charge of what's going on there, and that's a reflection, I'm afraid, of the dangerous world we've now entered. We need to be far braver in working with our allies to actually push Israel back, absolutely right. We also stand firm with Hamas, stand firm against Hamas as well.
Yeah, I just remind the audience, when someone's speaking, don't drown them out, because it makes things very complicated, basically. We won't get another question in. So okay, let's think. I'll go over there, the gentleman with the glasses and the...
You mentioned the Leffer curve earlier, which is something Arthur Leffer wrote in the 1980s on a napkin to John Rumsfeld, and Arthur Leffer himself actually...
what's your question, though?
Oh, okay. Sorry, it's like good at like year 12 in economics. And Nigel Farage recently...
Can we just come back to the rules? If we don't aim the question at one candidate, okay? Because that is aiming the question at one candidate.
For all of the candidates...
Just keep it simple. For all the candidates.
For all of the candidates here, if any of you have voted yes to keep the Rwanda bill, I was wondering if you could explain why you've done that.
That's good.
Oh, okay, I think it's quite...
No, that's the question.
Nigel Farage, when he was younger, used to sing Nazi songs in school. I was wondering if you think that's appropriate to stand in a party under his name in a town that has a synagogue in Moscow. Would you feel comfortable going up to them and saying what you stand for?
Which of the 17 questions are there?
Essentially, the question is, what is the panel's view on the Rwanda scheme?
I think the Rwanda scheme is, and always will be, utterly unworkable. I don't believe it was ever a sensible strategy, because I think people proposing it knew it wouldn't work, knew it would get stopped by the laws, and knew it would get stopped by the ECHR. I think they did it so they could appear to be tough, so they could say they were trying to support people who were here illegally, but not actually be forced into doing it. To my mind, there's one very simple solution, which is already acceptable under international law, because the people who are coming here on small boats have crossed through several safe countries already, and that is to tow them back to one of the safe countries they were in, which was France. But to answer the question, no, I don't agree the Rwanda scheme was very good. I don't think it was well thought out. I think it was mainly done as a deception to look tough.
Nice. Pointless. It doesn't work. It was never going to work. The Tories sort of did it to swing some voters back. You know, give, as Martin said, the facade that it might work. They might do something about it. But as we know, the Tories have given up. They've had 40 years of promises, and they've not delivered on anything. whether you support them or not. I mean, I certainly prefer it if they actually did the things they say they were going to do, regardless of whether I support them. You know, I want a government to govern, and the Tories have proven they're incapable of doing so. So, I repeat myself, no, the Rwanda scheme is utterly pointless, utterly frivolous, cost us a load of taxpayers' money, and frankly, the Tories should be ashamed of you considering it.
Very much the same, to be honest. I think the whole panel probably will be in agreement that the Rwanda scheme. Yeah, I don't know. When I first heard about it, I thought it was a wind-up, and then it turned out to be true. I think our immigration system is broken, like many people have said. I think that it's just such a mess, to be honest. Our court system to process people's asylum and people's claims to be here has such a backlog, and it's because of years and years of non-investment. So we're having a situation where people aren't being processed there for years, and they're here in limbo, and it's completely wrong. And the Rwanda scheme, yeah, it doesn't even touch the science. It's just something to talk about, something to get people talking, and yeah, I would not vote for it at all.
2 minutes.
2 minutes, yeah, I apologise. Yeah, it's not a great scheme, is it? Let's be frank, let's be honest. But where did I actually abstained most of the time until I was confirmed that we weren't going to leave the ECHR. And I have to say, there was a nervous moment today when our manifesto came out as to what was going to happen with the ECHR. And I've written articles, I've spoken out to say we cannot leave the ECHR. It was Churchill that helped craft it, for goodness sake. We should not be leaving. This is what Britain does. This is what I believe we should be doing. When something is wrong, we fix it. We don't run away from it. And the reason why we can't ship them back to France, I'm afraid, is because actually we left the EU, and that means we left the government. And that's why that system went away. Let's just step back and look at the bigger picture. Firstly, where did the Rwanda idea come from? It did exist beforehand, because the United Nations used it. They created that concept in Libya, where they took people who were fleeing from their lives, and they took them where? To Rwanda. Now, it isn't the answer to our migration issues here. It was promoted as one aspect of it. Firstly, just take a wider step back. The biggest issue that we're not been talking about today, which I've done a lot of studies on from a security perspective, is climate change. When climate change really hits Africa, there's going to be waves of migration coming where to Europe on a scale we haven't got our heads around yet. So we need to have a far better international approach. France and Germany are looking at the Rwanda scheme. Why not all of us get together and work out what we can do to solve the problems at source? Libya, Somalia, Yemen, Iraq, Afghanistan, Sudan is the latest one. These are the places that need our support now. Otherwise, the families there will do the toughest thing ever, turn their backs on their own country and head towards us.
So Labour government would scrap the Rwanda scheme immediately. We're disgusted that £500 million of public money, your money, my money, spent on paying by taxes, is going on this unworkable scheme. And more than that, we're concerned that this government would choose Rwanda as the place to send people, given the enormous human rights concerns about that government. You've just heard Kieron talking about the government's relationship with certain countries with difficult human rights relationships. This is just one more example. The second part of what I want to say is around climate refugees. Tobias is correct. We are going to see many more climate refugees. When I was head of UK campaigns at Oxfam, I didn't just lead campaigns to tackle climate change. I led campaigns to try and support refugees, particularly from Syria, to reset under the UK government scheme. But we can't express concern about climate refugees and then as an MP vote for the government's U-turns and support the government's U-turns on actions to tackle climate change. I'm not a fan of Theresa May. I'm not a fan of Boris Johnson. But I will say that Theresa May set a net zero target, and Boris Johnson began some investment in green levelling up. What we have with Rishi Sunak as Prime Minister is somebody who has scorched the earth on our green supply chains and our green industries. We had before him Liz Truss, somebody who scorched the earth on our public finances. If Labour is so lucky as to form a government, we're going to inherit an extremely difficult position where we want to accelerate our investment in green industries and jobs with little money and reduced green infrastructure. And that is down to the Conservatives. And I just want to close by saying this. Kieron is choosing to stand as an independent. Tobias could have chosen to stand as an independent. By standing as a Conservative, he is not just associating with the record of all that has gone before, which he has voted for the majority of the time. He can't just stand here and say he's unhappy about whether the Conservatives in their manifesto are going to pull out the ECHR. What you need is to have an MP that can have a functional relationship with their government, and that government not be one which you might be concerned with, will pull out the ECHR.
Yeah, basically I think the environment policy is something that clearly was written on the back of a napkin during a number 10 party lockdown or something. It's obscene, it speaks to the lowest common denominator as I see it. It's clearly not going to work, and it's trying to tackle a very serious problem and challenge with a gesture that's meant to speak to certain people, certain ideas and prejudices. So, in answer to the question, yes, completely scrap it, would vote completely against it. Tobias has alluded to it. One of the things that's motivated me to stand again this time around is the elephant in the room that is Brexit. It's trashed our economy. It has completely evaporated aspirations and hopes of young people. The Conservative Party was supposed to be a party of aspiration and hope and economy. They're being dashed because of Brexit, whether you like it or not, the figures are there. But clearly, in terms of immigration, it's had the reverse effect that was hoped by many of the people that supported it, or paid for it, if you like, invested in it. Because if you look at any graph, immigration has illegal and dangerous immigration, and let's be fair, it has to be stopped because it's dangerous. The traffickers are putting people in a very, very dangerous situation. They're putting them in a dangerous situation with the promise of a land over there, a tremendous physical, practical and economic cost to the people in the boats. Very similar to the Brexit narrative, as I would see it. I'm not going to hold any punches about that. And the dangerous situation there has to be stopped. By making up a gesture, a gimmick, in order to pretend you're dealing with it is obscene. It's a failure to address this issue correctly. We need proper foreign policy that prevents conflict. We need, as Tobias has said, proper climate change action, not tomorrow, not today, yesterday. It's multifactorial, the cause of this. And vilifying certain groups for your own political needs is obscene, and it has to be stopped.
Thank you for the question, for pointing out about Africa being nonsense. I mean, just before I answer, it's worth pointing out Thatcher set income tax at 60%, which is higher than it is at the moment. Anyway, in terms of Rwanda, that is policy by headline. That is a symptom of the government in its death throes. It's the same thing with national service. You know, they're just throwing out ideas, seeing what sticks. Desperate. They are definitely not getting back in. What we need is safe, legal routes into this country. It is as simple as that. Asylum applications should be processed quickly and efficiently. The majority of applications for asylum in this country are approved. They're found to be valid. And doing that would save us money. We are spending more money on ridiculous ideas like the bid and stock code that are essentially inhumane and ineffective, which is just the processing of asylum applications. And I'm going to be frank, it's annoying I'm banging on about it, but I'm going to mention it again. If we had a functioning system for processing asylum seekers, that is something that would have helped potentially prevent the murder of Thomas Roberts 2 years ago. It is disgusting that our asylum system treats the people coming here seeking safely inhumanely and also puts the rest of us at risk. what we need to look at is why people come here. One of the big draws to this country is the criminal economy that exists. That exists because of our laws around drugs and prostitution. Decriminalisation is key. That doesn't mean the local supermarkets selling smack and heroin. It means that you take control of the supply of drugs in our communities outside of the control of criminal gangs and back into the public sector where it's regulated. I'd also point out that the punishment for employing somebody who's smuggled here illegally is a fine. Any crime for which the punishment is a fine essentially means legally you get enough money. And super quick, I am glad that we fought the Nazis and beat them in World War II. I'm very sorry for having to say it.
Thank you. We'll go for the next question. I'll go for the gentleman in the red there. Well, you objecting?
Yeah, just thinking. He just happened to be in the right place at the right time.
Thank you. My name is George, I'm a councillor at a neighbouring ward. My question is, but first of all, I just wanted to thank Mark for coming back and chairing these things. I want to thank every candidate here, and that we've got a full house for 7 candidates, and the courage that it takes to actually stand up and be judged by the public. Whether it be at Hustings or at the ballot box. My question is this: in the BCP conurbation, I know we're concentrating on Bournemouth East, there is about 1 in 5 people that have accessibility needs. My question is, for those 80,000 across the conurbation, which 1 in 5 will exist within Bournemouth East, is what will you, as a successful MP after this election, which is only 3 weeks away, do within a government, whatever type of government, and whoever leads that government formed? What will you do with those 1 in 5 people that have accessibility needs in your constitution?
Yeah, thanks for the question, George. I think a lot of these issues and challenges are simply addressed by paying proper attention to core concepts of decency and fairness. And if there are people that don't have access, provide it, make it. Equality is not about direct provision that people have, it's about access and availability and freedoms. So if elected as Bournemouth East MP, I would very much keep my eye on that ball. I work in a range of community groups across the country, and I've seen, I was recently in North Wales doing some training and services up there, and I was really impressed because it was palpable that more effort and energy had been put into this. And I think not only is it useful and right and proper for those who have access because of correct provision, it also sends a signal and a reminder to all of us. We don't never know what position we will be in. So that's all I have to say really. Just the fundamental concepts of decency, fairness and sensitivity. If we get those right, these things, the fact that we need to force it and fight for it is astonishing. And also I find it astonishing there's such a difference across regions. That's all I have to celebrate. So someone else will use much a minute.
So I think one essential thing that needs to happen is the replacement of PIP with vouchers. I think that's a disgusting move. I think it should be, and it is, cash payments. I don't like the idea of this voucher scheme being introduced. That is not something that allows people with disabilities to live with dignity. I'm rubbish when I'm reading up my notes, so I'm not in public speaking. I would also say that free personal care to people in their old age is absolutely essential as well with disabilities. One of the most harrowing things that happened to my grandmother when she was in a care home was she simply stopped paying the bills because she couldn't afford to pay them. She wanted to hand on her house to her family, her children. And the care home were quite happy with that because they knew she wasn't long for this world, and the moment she passed away, You're told, oh, she's not paying her bills, you're selling the house, aren't you? We'll take that money. It is disgusting that that happens to people. If you are very, very rich, you will hand on all of your wealth. You've got the lawyers to make it happen. The legal system is set up for you. But if you're drafted to try and leave something for your relatives, to your children, you will find that the total absence of any kind of care or support for elderly people now in this society leaves you essentially destitute until you have nothing left. I can't get over how to treat old people in this country. If you've ever worked in a care home, you'll know that those staff work hard to try and do the best that they can, but they're stretched, they're paid very, very little, they are constantly lured away to jobs that are not as emotionally demanding. And it beggars belief. We're a developed country. You know, we have Sky TV. We put satellites in space and we cannot look after grandma. Right, that's my tip.
So, most of you probably don't know, but let's just revisit the question about what can we do to help people get accessibility, particularly disabled people. Now, a few years ago, when my daughter was born, my wife and I started to create a website which was specifically to get disabled people out of the home and into the countryside so they can enjoy the countryside. It was a website called Walks with Wheelchairs, and over the 5 years that we ran it, it became the most popular disabled access website, the most popular disabled access website for getting people out in the country, even bigger than the Ramblers disabled website. So what I'm saying to you is you have to judge your candidates based on what they've done before. I wanted to mention that because it's something that we did just for the love of it. We did it for free, we didn't get paid to do it, and we didn't receive any sponsorship on this either. It was a site that we ran for ourselves because we wanted to help people get out into the countryside, specifically those people with accessibility challenges.
It's not really rocket science, is it? Give the councils the money they need, provide the services they need, to give people the accessibility they need. Raise minimum wage to a living wage so people who are working can actually afford to do things they want to do. I don't really think more needs to be said on it, because as I said, it's not rocket science. Fund the councils, allow them to do what they need to do to get the job done. Common sense.
Cheers. I don't want to repeat what the other candidates have said, but I think from my point of view, what I can add to the conversation is I think we have a really good opportunity to be one of the most accessible tourist towns in the UK. I think there's a really, really good opportunity to enable people to have access to the seafront and to have access to our wonderful coastline. A few years ago, my mum passed away, and a few years ago before she did, I took her to Rome for 10 days, and it's really, really hard to get around Rome with a wheelchair. But what was really helpful was in our Airbnb, there was a guide provided by the City Council of Rome that told you exactly what you needed to do in terms of accessibility. It told you the best places to go, the best restaurants, and it was really, really useful. So I'd really like to see one of those come to fruition for our local area. And I'd just like to see generally our accessibility to the beautiful things that we have in town improved. So,
Thanks very much. It's such an important question. I've had the honour of actually speaking at an event run by the council. In fact, I brought together a number of the private sector operators in Bournemouth to encourage people that had disabilities, both mental and physical, that perhaps weren't making steps back into work, to encourage them with programs and things like that. It was a fantastic initiative. It's been now running for I think a couple of years, and all tribute. I criticise the council a lot, but this particular initiative has been absolutely fantastic, and it shows it's not just about throwing money, it's about actually providing initiatives. It's not just the council itself, but the actual private sector, individuals working together for a programme. I spent a lot of time working with veterans, and many of them lose their self-esteem, their sense of courage and determination when they've lost a leg or so forth, or have mental injuries as well. And getting back up, trying to find the new chapter in their life can take a little bit of support and a bit of encouragement. That's absolutely important to do. I actually had a hip replacement a year ago, and the experience I had personally, firstly not being able to get out of bed myself, walk around and so forth. My mother's now in a wheelchair as well. It's opened my eyes up to all the challenges that people are facing every single day. So there are initiatives that we can do in looking around us through a different lens to say, what can we do to actually improve our environment for the disability people that you raise, and quite importantly you do so. Thank you.
I want to thank you for the question, because it's actually a question that rarely gets asked, because disabled people rarely get the attention they deserve. And for me, this is an incredibly personal topic. Both of my parents were disabled. From a very early age, I was a carer for them. I would be the person who would put money on the electricity meter. I'd be the person who would go to the shop to make sure that we had food in the house. And the thing that overwhelmingly taught me is that it's not a person's impairment that disables them. It's the attitudes, it's the policies, and it's the way of life of our society that disables people. And we probably have one of the most disabled governments in history. My mum's paying bedroom tax. I know countless people in Bournemouth East that I've been supporting who are struggling with their universal credit claims. There's countless people who are affected by their inability to fill in the basic forms, because those forms are basic. They are overwhelmingly complex, and it's almost like they're complex for a reason. It's almost like the government don't want disabled people to claim the social security support that they're entitled to, however meagre that is. And I'm sorry to have to say this, but this is a policy of a Conservative government carried forward by successive Prime Ministers, supported continuously in Parliament by our current Conservative MP. And as your MP, it would be a line in the sand for me. Disabled people would have a voice in Parliament. They would have somebody who would listen to them, who would bring them together into spaces so that they can talk about what it means to them to be disabled, what they want from their MP, what they want from their government, what they want from their society. Because we can do better. We must do better. And I'll close just by saying this. People with lived experience really matter to decision making. We heard about the Poverty Truth Commission earlier, and on reading that report, and on reading about the testimony of people with lived experience, you realise that decision making could be so much better if people with lived experience could actually shape policy. And as your MP, I would absolutely make sure that that is the case.
Okay, next question. I'll go with the lady in the middle there.
I'm Julie, I'm a constituent, and I just want to know, I've got two children who are just slightly older than this Tory government, and we benefited from Sure Start centres, but now there's not very much for teenagers to do, there's no youth clubs, there's no services like that. Can you tell me what you're going to do to help the youth clubs?
Goes back to what I was saying earlier about accessibility, really. The councils have been starved of budget. Without any budget, they can't provide youth centres, they can't provide, these centres wouldn't do anything. Fund the councils, give them the ability to operate the service they need to operate, and we will prosper. You know, I'm 29, so I grew up sort of to the tail end of when we had these things. And it was great. I went to Oakley, I did, you know, me and my mates, we used to go to the underground centre. That's kind of fallen off the cliff in the Salmon. You know, there was heaps of clubs and opportunities for the council run, and now they don't, so they can't afford it. Fund the councils. I can't possibly understand why it's that difficult for people in government to understand. Well, yeah, I mean, SGP policy is all about looking at waste as well, efficiency. So we get people in to audit the councils, any excess waste will be cut. So the council has to spend money on things it needs to spend it on, such as youth centres. Who's next?
Cheers, thank you. To be honest, I do agree with Miles. I do think that we need more investment into our youth services. That there really isn't any provision. Earlier today, I was at a community meeting that I chaired down in Townsend, and I'm hearing stories of young kids selling or offering drugs to other young kids, and just, you know, we're going through an era of young adults and young children carrying knives, and it's just absolutely, I just don't recognise it. I never had this when I was growing up. I never ever knew anybody who was carrying a knife, and now it seems like everybody knows somebody, and it really is weird how it seems to tally up with, you can almost track it back to when the investment in youth services stopped, you know, and it isn't rocket science, like Miles has said. So I would invest in youth, but it's also understanding what kids these days actually want, because again, it's very different. I know I'm going to sound old even though I'm quite young. It's a very different generation to those that I grew up, you know. One big concern for me is around social media. We're actually having to provide toolkits to schools to deal with how to deal with people and children who are being exposed to Andrew Tate and different influencers and media figures online, where they're getting all these terrible habits and things that they shouldn't be doing. So I think we also need to be trying to clamp down on that, but it really does come down to investment. What can you expect children to do if there's nothing for them to do? And I think, yeah, I would vote in favour of every single provision for children in Parliament. And I would also not vote for any more public cuts. I would absolutely not vote for any more public cuts, because we are at the government.
Thank you for the question. It's really important as what happens with our kids, what they do, how they're spending their time, particularly as has been alluded to, how kids, or what they do with their time, is very different to how we grew up, particularly with the screens and so forth. We're very blessed with a fantastic area here in Bournemouth, right next to the sea and so forth, but we're not taking advantage of the possibilities that we could encourage children and youth and so forth to participate in activities. I was at the Hengsley Head Activity Centre, you might be familiar with it, just near the Hungry Hiker, and unfortunately they're threatened with closure. So we're now looking carefully at what we can do to see whether there's some sponsorship and funding to keep them open. Too often things across Bournemouth, whether it's padding rules, or young youth, and so are being closed down because of the challenges of the budget, I guess, from the council. But where does that leave? Where is the long-term vision to take us through? I'll go out on a limb here and say that when you look at other second cities or third towns or things like that across other parts of the world, the amount of tax that they can actually raise is far greater than is allocated from Westminster to here. We have the levelling up funds, we have other ways of getting money down from Westminster. But what do they know best? How do they know as to where money should go? We've had some money to improve the sea fund, we've had some money to improve activities here. But I'd like to see local government receive far more of a slice of money, so local decision making can then direct funds to youth activities or whatever. We've yet to address that. I do hope it's something whoever wins the next government will actually bring to a fore, so we can make the decisions here in Bournemouth, Christchurch and Houlden.
Thank you for the question. I just want to slightly counter what some of the other panelists have said here, because implicit in what they've said is that there are endemic problems with the emerging youth. When I go to schools and when I talk to younger people, I actually feel very hopeful. I feel like they get so many of the social issues we face. They get so many of the economic issues we face. They're globalist in their thinking. They want to do right by their community, but they just feel let down. So actually, the kids are all right. Let's feel hopeful about our next generation. And actually, let's just support them to achieve the life that they want to lead. Here in Bournemouth, we've got incredible natural assets to develop green jobs in the green industry. But we're missing out. We've got a university at BU and ABU too, which provides world-leading creative arts degrees. But we're missing out. We've also got fantastic hospitality, healthcare, and higher education sectors. But we're missing out. So why don't you have a Labour MP who will bring attention and investment into Bournemouth? Why don't you have a Labour MP who can work with a Labour government to do just that? And I also just want to slightly pull up the current MP, because it's not good enough to say, let's try and find more money for local government, when budget after budget, year after year, you have voted for a reduction in local government funding. And as a councillor for nearly 10 years, some of those as deputy leader, I felt my arm up my back, trying to deliver services and support to communities, them looking for a better way of life, and feeling entirely frustrated and let down. I just want to close by saying that as a Labour MP, what I want to be able to do is not just bring attention and investment into Bournemouth, but actually continue to go to schools, continue to go to youth clubs, and with the investment the Labour government would make in a network of youth hubs, make sure that I form a youth advisory board, so that I can hear directly from younger people about the issues that matter to them, meet with them on a regular basis, and be held accountable by them for driving action in Parliament, whether it is about setting up a network of youth hubs, whether it is about investing in 6,500 teachers in our schools, whether it is about mental health professionals in our schools too. Thank you.
It's all right,
thank you. I've been allowed to come back on that because I was mentioned directly. I worked really, really hard just now to get a SEND school for Bournemouth that we required. When I first became an MP, I secured £5 million to what was then Somerby School, now Bishop of Winchester. If that money hadn't been secured, it was taken away from them, then I don't know where that school would have gone, because it was in a tough situation. We also need to reflect on the fact that COVID and the war in Ukraine would have tested any government. It's not an excuse, it's just a reality check. £400 billion COVID cost, and it hit all government departments. So, absolutely, I want to work hard for education. Standards here in the UK have risen. We're top of the European league tables now. We can be very proud of that for what our kids are now able to do. But please, if we're going to have a debate about this, let's keep things in perspective. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm getting a bit tired of the COVID and Vladimir Putin. Clearly, they have consequences globally and economically, but also Liz Truss, who trashed the economy. Yes, going back to the question, I told you earlier on I'd been to the Citizens Advice Bureau today, and I did say to the guy, Bob, I said, look, I'm going to this hustings tonight, what should I say? And I was going to, thank you, I don't have to crowbar it into a random answer. I said, what should I say? He said, bring back youth clubs. Bring back youth clubs, because it is a kind of a no-brainer, because they provide spaces. Now, you've mentioned, Kieron, the internet and toxic masculinity, and I've been involved in processes that have tried to address that. It's very, very difficult, because your relationship with the internet and your mobile phone is a very intimate one, and it's very secure. So we can mitigate it, we need to sort of regulate to some degree and try and fight that directly. But for me, the best solution is shared collective spaces that are safe, where voice is offered and engagement is provided. And I think, Julie, you mentioned sure starts in your question. I think one of the things that really did make me wince about the coalition, although I'm a consensus-based, you can't argue for multi-party politics and then run away at the first opportunity, but one of the big mistakes that we sanctioned in the coalition was the abandoning of sure starts. I think we need to reinvent it, recreate it for our time. Not only because it's good, but also there's a clear, palpable need. I caution against being alarmist, and I take much of what Tom said in terms of, the kids are all right, to a degree. There is much hope and potential and positivity there. But don't forget, there are a lot of kids and young people who are being excluded from schools. They're not all right. We're becoming increasingly polarised. It's about provision and access. Some kids don't need youth clubs, they've got tennis clubs, they've got riding schools. The vast majority don't. We need to reinvent that provision, make it there not just because it's the right thing to do, but because it's economically sensible. And I think I've run out of time. Thank you, Betty. 10 seconds.
So, Julie, thank you for the question. I think it's probably one that a lot of people have, and it's absolutely bang on. I must say I'm no fan of Labour. Iraq left an unforgivably bad taste in my mouth. But I must say, Sure Start, absolutely bang on. When it comes to this, like so many other topics, I'm going to quote Clinton, it's the economy, stupid. We need the money to fund these things. That will only come if we tax the very, very rich. That's why I'm so keen on a wealth tax. I think we need to bring in evidence-based policy innovations that work. I'm no longer hub manager, I'm now a data engineer in the NHS, where part of what we do is we identify what we call innovations at scale. So things that have worked on a small scale in an area, you can bring in and work on a larger scale. And my gut feeling is youth centres are one of those things that work incredibly well. The problem is, if you're looking for local authorities to do that, there is no money. If BCP Council had existed in 2010, their non-ring-fenced grant would have been 106 million. Guess how much it is now? It is 6 million. A real-term cut of £100 million in funding. Now, one of the reasons I'm very sceptical about what change Labour will bring is that they've been very, very clear. They will not give any more money to local authorities, they will give us extra powers. Now, unless that's the power to magically print money out of my arse, we are screwed. We need more money for these services. Much as there are evidence-based things like youth centres that will absolutely help, one of the biggest drivers of so many ills in our country is economic inequality. If you're a big fan of boring books on policy, Spirit Level by Richard Wilkinson and Kate Pickett is absolutely bang on. It points out everything from knife crime to obesity, drug addiction, all of these ills, there is one lever you can pull to solve them, and that is reducing income inequality. That's why we need to fix the tax loopholes, bring in a wealth tax and all of that. It is that simple. It is just about tackling the corruption that leaves those things in place. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the question. I can certainly resonate with that issue myself. My wife and I have 2 children, and they do spend far too long inside. I remember when I was their age, I'd be out on my bike all the time, seeing my friends around the corner. I'm not sure I'd be very happy, very comfortable with my kids riding their bikes around the streets at the moment. There's too many cars, the standard driving is atrocious. But I do need to do something, all need to do something, particularly for my son, to get him off his PS5. I think the biggest thing that parents are concerned about letting the kids go out and play with youth clubs, or going out to their friends' houses, just hanging out like we used to be back in the day, is not just crime, but it's the fear of crime. You wonder what they're going to be getting up to. You wonder who they're going to see on the way out there. And so I do agree with the calls that people have said to refund youth clubs. Youth clubs seem to be a perfect solution to a lot of these problems. Let's not forget that there are plenty of because of our natural resources we have, there are plenty of places we can go. We can go to the beach, there are free tennis courts that kids can go and play at. And there are things that are a bit more expensive. There's a Prevail skate house, which I know my son does, and kids go there all the time. And they get out of the house, they get fit, they're running around a bit. It's a fantastic resource, but I think with a combined solution of more youth clubs and actually getting the motivation, getting to get off their chairs, get away from the computers, to go and explore and use some of the free facilities we have in the town, I think we could make some great progress.
Okay, next question. I'll tell you what, gentlemen there, yeah, that's it, yeah.
Yeah, my name's Chris. I'm just wondering what any of you are actually going to do about electoral reform. The parties we have aren't being responsive to the people. What are you going to do about it?
So, I'm a big fan of electoral reform. I'm going to be really simple. What I would like to see is something like STV, parliamentary MPs. So I think a constituency should still have a single representative. STV will be my voting system of choice. I bet you there are some of you out in the crowd who are real boffins on voting systems and will tell me that actually Belgium's got a system called whatever that's even better. But yeah, absolutely that. PR for the House of Lords. Get rid of the House of Lords as a hereditary thing. That's it. It's that simple. I will do that and we'll sort out lobbying and donations as well. There should be a cap on spending and a cap on donations. The dirty money flowing into politics is a major problem. You're about to get lots of glossy promises from everybody else. And I'm not, like I say, I really dislike a lot of broken promises in 97. In 1997, it was a manifesto commitment from the Labour Party to reform our electoral system and get rid of first past the post. They had chance after chance after chance to fix it. Labour would rather our country is stuck with a broken voting system that only sees use in Belarus in Europe, because they would rather play second fiddle to the Tories forever than risk becoming politically irrelevant in a more proportional system, which they and the Tories would do over. And that's all I've got to say. It's a really straightforward subject. The problem is the money and the corruption. That's why we cannot rely on Labour and the Tories to deliver the electoral reform we need.
I think there's going to be a common theme here between the smaller parties and the two major parties. And that is that along with, this is possibly the only policy initiative that I agree with the Greens and the Lib Dems on.
You said that twice now, I'm getting worried.
No, I just said Lib Dems the first time, this time it's the Greens and the Lib Dems. And actually, Alistair will remember a debate several years ago where I said the very same thing on a radio debate at Bournemouth University, I seem to recall. Yeah, I am in favour of some sort of proportional representation for Westminster elections. I don't know the details, the difference between AV, AV2. I can't even remember what the difference was back in the 2012 election. So, but suffice to say, in the lead up to any kind of vote, any kind of bills around that, we would get a lot of information, spend a lot of time studying it, and I would put questionnaires out to constituents to find what they thought of each one and which one they valued the most. But, the thing you should take away from this is that, again, I agree, the first past the post system is antiquated, and I would quite happily see some form of proportional representation.
Not to sound like broken records, but PR. I think we're all in agreement that the big two, am I right? They only support it because it directly benefits them. But I would also reform the House of Lords. I think we don't need to abolish it, but we need to reform it and sack off all the hereditary peers and the bishops and all that. They can go. Replace them with people on 15-year terms. Once you've done 15 years, you're out. And then you don't get situations where Liz Truss or Penn or Gordon Brown or David Cameron can elect all their mates up until Boris Johnson even collect their mates or their daughters into the House of Lords for 1 million years, because they'll have 15 years, And then, yeah. Anyone disagree with that?
If you've got someone that becomes an MP and has 20 years in politics and then wants to go to the House of Lords, you'd be saying, sorry, but once you've reached such a certain age, you're not allowed to carry on. So somebody might be a good politician at the age of 70 and think Biden is in his 80s. I think politics is ageing.
I mean, in regards to Biden, I'm not sure we're all convinced by his ability as a politician at this point of his career. But I don't think it's finished at all. You can be an MP at any age. If you want to serve in the House of Lords, you have 15 years. The idea is to stop people getting in at, say, my age, and living the rest of their lives as a member of the House of Lords. I like it. Well, we need an upper house. It's sort of we'll keep the House of Lords terminology because it's tradition, but I think the House of Lords we know it won't exist.
The House of Lords is a regulatory body.
The royal family will get rid of them while you're ready.
I actually really like our first past post because I keep winning elections. I've won 3 already and I'm quite happy with it. But on a serious note, I'd be more than content to never run an election again, never win an election again, if we got right representation. So I'd be happy for whatever kind of representation gave us. What we need to make our communities better, what we need to increase our standard of living and our quality of life. And yeah, hopefully I'll make it for on the 4th of July. But until then we have an electoral reform, I'll keep standing. Thank you.
Well, yes. What I am trying to get across in this election is my willingness to stand up to present what I believe in, and often it does align with the Conservative Party that I believe in too. I found on occasions that the Conservative Party that I joined, that I'm passionate about, the Conservative Party of Disraeli, of Houlden, of Churchill, of Thatcher, of David Cameron, is not the same as that of Liz Truss and Boris Johnson, and which is why it's people like me that stood up against them. Now, if we don't have people like me absolutely challenging them, then people like Liz Truss would have continued on. And likewise with the ECHR, that was all said, what's going on there? Well, it's because there's internal debates in parties, quite likely that they happen, that we end up actually nudging the party in a wise direction. It takes courage to do that. And on this particular issue, yes, we are the mother of all parliaments. We've led the world in advancement of our democracy, and we are overdue another upgrade as to what our democracy looks like. The House of Lords, we had opportunity in our coalition to do that, to bring in a Senate structure. I think it was 15 years, and then you're out. It didn't happen. It fell apart. I don't know why. And why, also wisely, on the first past the post system, we're going to see this in this government as well, of who gets across the line, because votes are tactical, or indeed they're taken away from this way or that. Should you really be representing a constituency if you get 35% of the vote? Absolutely not. France is about to go to elections, and they have a dual system here, whereby you go through one phase and then another if nobody gets across the line the first time round. I'm not sure what models required, but I do know that we can be very proud of our history, our advance in democracy, but we stalled and it's overdue. And I say that, and that is not Conservative policy, but I'm willing to stand up to you today and say that that's where I personally would like to go.
Yeah, you won't get any glossy promises from me. I haven't got any. But yeah, lots of common ground. I often get sort of challenged by the fact that you clearly agree with proportional representation and changing the election system because your party will benefit. I actually take quite a different spin. I think we should offer the country what it votes for. And I think the general consensus is, bar a few people, that the country is in an astounding mess. It's falling apart. I've never seen it so awful. I'm 56, not being involved in elections, but this is crushing. It causes much despair, which is visible. But the good news is, folks, we didn't vote for that. We did not vote for that because Boris Johnson's party at that time got 43%, which was converted into 60% of MPs, which is 100% of power. In no way can that be sensible, fair, or even decent. We have to have structural change. But I also think one of my opponents on my right here, Tom, is making much of the tactical voting thing. And we have to do that in this election. We have to think about tactical voting in order to challenge something. But the problem is when parties, the bigger parties get in, they never pay heed or nod or even acknowledge the mathematics of the actual election. They claw all of the power and then they do what they like. And it's obscene. It's not how we run our families, it's not how good businesses run their businesses. We need to inculcate into our culture and our politics more of a consensus language. And the government that does win, the party that does win, and I genuinely think I'm part of it, purely because of what I've just